So we're recording. And anyway, so yeah, like I was going to say before getting specifically into your module two discussion, some of the big mistakes I see are their idea isn't unique, right? So, and you
Mhm.
only lose 1 point for that, generally speaking. What are some other big mistakes? Not defining the key terms, which I'll talk about in detail here in a second, right? So if you read hold on, let me just share my screen. I'll get there. Anyway, not defining the key terms is a big one. Not properly using a reference. Some people don't use references at all, so that'll lose you 2 points. And then if you don't properly, by properly I mean you should say something like, according to my source, this information, right?
Mhm.
As opposed to just listing something. And I know that sounds like a real pain, but one, it's a good habit for for everybody to be in, and two, that rule's written in blood, so to speak, because previously students would just leave any old link. I'm like, oh, I left a link, I left a source, and then it turned out that it had nothing to do with what they were writing. So that's why you guys have to jump through these hoops, because you had lazy people before you. But anyway, I'm looking for your module two discussion here. Here we go. Module two discussion. Two options. Proceed. Okay. So I'm going to share the screen. How about this too? Before I share it and talk to you about what you wrote, what are your thoughts on it? Because too, if what you say, basically meets those categories in the prompt, then that's also good enough, and I can also add some more points for that. So, what are your thoughts on that for the between increasing the carrying capacity or reducing human population growth? First of all, what would you choose if you had to?
I chose decreasing. I'm trying to pull it up here on my iPad so that way I can read along with it with you.
All right.
But I chose decreasing because to me, that made more sense from personal views and also just logistically.
Right. Okay. So yeah, so now you should be able to see it because I pulled it up.
Okay, cool.
So out of the two options, I would personally reduce human population. You've seen people reverting back to older values, having larger families, when in reality, having just one or two children can send family into massive debt. Correct. Not to mention the amount of money spent on food and resources for larger families in today's inflating economy. Very true. However, if we proposed a solution of birth control being mandatory accommodation for people, along with mandating how many children a family can have, mandating birth control will allow it to become more normalized. Stigma behind it can be ended. Mm-hmm. And will give people the freedom to know they can stop taking it when they're financially, emotionally ready to have children. First of all, I just want to say I love this idea. So, like, as far as discussions concerned and not grading, I think
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great idea because you're not, um, there were some options that people wrote about, which is okay because that was the assignment. But some people had some very intrusive ideas. This is a lot less intrusive. Having a number of children for each family can also take some pressures off couples, and they can exactly plan how they want their family dynamics to play out. If a couple decides that they only want two children, they can budget. Okay, the disadvantage. You list the disadvantages. Good. Okay, so contraceptive measures will need to be taken to make sure surprise pregnancy didn't occur. Okay. So the issue, and I know this might seem picky, but first of all, you'll have to, if you read the prompt, and it seemed like, again, I know this seems really repetitive, but it's for a reason. So you need to define um, human population growth, and you need to define carrying capacity. Even though like you only chose one, you still need to define them both.
Mm-hmm.
One, it helps to get in your brain by repeating it, right? So it helps you. Also, it helps your students, or excuse me, your classmates, because they're reading it again, right? So the idea here is for you guys to keep writing it and keep reading it. And that's just to help it get in your brain a little bit better. And also, to be honest, there's some of your classmates that don't have textbooks yet, for example. And like when they send me an email and say, "Hey, I can't do this assignment yet because I don't have a textbook," and I can tell them like, "Well, no, just read your classmates because they left the definition, so you can go off of their definition." So yeah, there's
Mm-hmm.
2 points for that, and then 2 points because there wasn't a source, right, a reference, and then just 1 point because your idea had already been listed a few times by other people.
Mm.
So it was good overall, but that's how you could make it better. And again, the best way to do it, and I don't blame anybody for missing this, but you have to reread those prompts and read them carefully. And again, I'm going to say it now that I'm being recorded again. I know some of them are really long and detailed, and I
Mm-hmm.
apologize, but that's the best I can do with those, because I don't want to be too vague, because they used to be when I first started this. They were vague, and I had student feedback that said it was too vague. So I tried to make it very, very specific, which again can be overwhelming because there's a lot to read. So make sure when you're wondering in the future, I mean, definitely come to me so you can get this boost. But also, look back at read the prompts carefully. And like you mentioned, I didn't leave you any feedback, so it's a good time to remind you, anybody that watches the video, I did leave that feedback for other people. So
Okay.
yeah, so like eventually I just stopped repeating myself. And I also say this too: I've been a student, so I ask you guys to read the other posts before you write your own. In a perfect world, that's what you should do. But I also know that you can't always do it. So it's not like there's no kind of moral judgment here. Sometimes you just got to get the assignment done. You don't have time to do all that. So
I work a full-time demanding job. I'm a non-medical caregiver, so whenever I get a free moment, I carry my iPad with me everywhere I go, and I plug in my hotspot, and whenever I get a moment is when I try.
I get it. Yeah. So I get your situation. So in your particular situation, my specific advice would be, I guess, just write extra. Because like I said, yes, you should read the prompt very carefully and refer back to it. And yes, you should read your classmates' post, but it sounds like in your life situation, that's not very feasible. So in your situation, even though you should do those things, and I still hope you do, what might help you is just write extra replies, moving forward.
Okay.
Because oddly enough, I don't know, depends on how you are, but for me, it would be easier and more time friendly, schedule friendly, to just do extra stuff as opposed to reading everybody else's stuff. So I don't know. So whatever works for you, but that would be my suggestion. So yeah, that's why you lost the points for that one. And then if we're looking at the replies here, completely agree with your post and how the negative outcomes outweighs the positive when it comes to using coal. You presented. Okay, it's easy to show how cheap and reliable coal is. So for the sake of discussion or the sake of conversation, that was a great reply. But again, just going back to the prompt, you had to list one advantage and one disadvantage, like explicitly say, off of their ideas. All right, based on what you wrote, here's an advantage you didn't list, and here that no one's listed. Here's a disadvantage that no one's listed, and here's a reference. So that's it. Like again, for the sake of discussion or the sake of conversation, what you wrote was great. But if you look at the prompts, for the sake of points, you just didn't meet those bullet points. And that brings me to this, actually, while you're looking. I'll show you what I mean. Of course, you probably know, so this might be also just for the sake of people watching. But let's see. You can still just see your screen, right? Let me fix this. Stop sharing. New tab. Module 2 discussion. Yes. This part right here. So everybody, it's easy to, maybe this might help. I don't know. It's basically broken down two ways, right? There's me describing it in writing, which is up top here. And then there's the part that I highlighted. It's like bullet points. Like you're going to lose points for this. You can lose points for that. So, if you were to look at the prompt here, not responding with only one advantage, one disadvantage, choosing one that's not been chosen before, and including a reference. So easy mistakes to make, especially for the first module or two, where everybody's getting to understand how I grade and how the prompts go. So I have a feeling moving forward, you're going to probably do much better.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. And like I said, I know you don't have time, or you might not have time, but if in a perfect world, if you can, read the prompt carefully, refer back to it a lot, read your classmates, because also the mistakes that you made, other people made. And I did leave feedback for them a few times, like, a number of different people. So you were just in one of those situations where you had already made the mistake after a bunch of other people had. So that's the only reason you didn't get feedback, because I had already left the same feedback a lot for other people. But again, for you and anybody watching the video, this is even better. I prefer to meet with somebody and actually talk about it. Yeah, that's even better than us typing back and forth. And speaking of which, before we're done, is there anything that you want to say about the prompt or the grade or anything? Because if you want to argue more points, or, if there's anything you think I messed up on, let me know.
No, I just appreciate you being honest with me and that sort of thing. And I'm glad the point itself and the discussion was good, and that you liked it. I just apologize that I didn't meet all of the requirements.
Yeah.
But moving forward, I'm going to do everything that I can and what I can. And like you said, in a perfect world, but I'm human, so.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. And the grade is the grade. I was as a student, I worked full time, and I had a kid, so I understand how it was. And I would just sometimes I would just, pardon my French, but I would half-ass something because I had to. Like, it's either half-ass it or not do it at all because I'm going to miss the deadline. So sometimes you just have to do that. But and I would just accept the grade that I got, which I'm not saying you shouldn't have come to me to ask. I'm just saying, sometimes you just have to do that and deal with what you get, but also do this and get your feedback if you don't know why you got what you got. So I'm glad we did this. Are there any other questions or anything else you want me to go over?
No, I appreciate your time.
No problem. All right. So the last thing I'll ask from you as I stop recording is if you could send me an email and